Hello everyone, welcome back to Owen's Treats. For today's video, we'll be making chocolate dip peppermint meringue cookies. And so basically how this came about is that, first of all, it's December 1st, so it's the holiday season now. And second is because I made pumpkin spice meringues for Thanksgiving. So I thought, why not make them peppermint flavored? So with that, let's get into the video. I'll start with the ingredients and I'll also explain to you what meringues are later in the video. So with that, let's get into it. And so what basically a meringue cookie is that it's just whipped egg whites that are infused with cream of tartar, your flavoring, and sugar, and then it's baked in the oven, and it becomes this light and airy cookie. And so for our ingredients, we have our 4 egg whites, and then we have 1 cup of sugar, and then we'll have the ½ teaspoon of pure peppermint extract, and then a ½ teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, and then 1/4 a teaspoon of cream of tartar. If you can't find cream of tartar, a nice substitute for that is just lemon juice. And for every like 1/4 a teaspoon, I think it's like 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. So it's a great substitute. And then we have our red food coloring, our crushed, we're gonna crush these peppermints later, but with peppermint candies, and of course our chocolate chips, which we'll melt down later to dip our meringue cookies into. So with that, let's start with our first step. So for our first step, we're going to start by whipping up our egg yolks. And so this is going to take a very long time. And so you're going to need a little bit of patience for these to actually get to the process they need to be at. But we're aiming for stiff peaks with our egg whites, not egg yolks. But we're going to aim for stiff peaks, and there's going to be a few steps along the way as they are getting to that process. For right now, we're going to add our 4 egg whites into our bowl, and then our cream of tartar, we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon. Like I said earlier, if you need a substitute, if you don't have this, since it is kind of hard to find at grocery stores, instead of a 1/4 teaspoon, you can add 1 whole teaspoon of lemon juice, and that'll do the same effect. So we're just going to start off with that, and then we're going to start whisking these until they get foamy. You will need a stand mixer or hand mixer for this because hand whisking it would be quite an adventure. We're going to whip these until the egg whites become to get a little bit frothy, and then we're going to start adding in 1 teaspoon of our sugar into our bowl at a time until we use up the entire cup. So let's start getting our egg white to frothy consistency. Going from slow to high speed, we're going to start whipping our egg whites. And so I'll show you what frothy means basically as we finish up our first stage of whipping our egg whites. And they just come out to be this kind of frothy texture, and you see all the bubbles and all that. That's what frothy means. And so now that the egg whites are frothy, we're going to turn it back on to our high speed, and gradually we're going to add 1 teaspoon of sugar until we use up the entire thing, and our egg whites start to become soft peaks. And at that point, we'll move on to our next step. Okay, so now that we are finished with adding in all of our sugar, I'll show you what the egg whites look like right now. And as you can see, they've formed this kind of foamy texture. And if I stick my whisk in and I flip it upside down, this is what's considered a soft peak. So this is when the peak kind of flops over once you kind of drag it up, and it looks evident in the bowl too. And this is what is for our next step, what we need it to be at. And we're aiming for stiff peaks too, so it takes a long while. But now that we have our consistency at soft peaks, we've added all of our sugar little at a time. We are now going to add in our peppermint and our vanilla. So while it's mixing, I'm going to add in a ½ teaspoon of our vanilla and of our peppermint extract. So I'm going to keep mixing this. I'm going to put it in our vanilla and our peppermint, and then I'm going to let this keep mixing until it reaches stiff peaks. So I'm going to add ½ a teaspoon of our peppermint extract, A little peppermint goes a long way, so be very careful of how much peppermint extract you're using. I'm going to add half a teaspoon of our vanilla extract. And now I'm going to let this keep mixing until our egg whites reach stiff peaks. So I'm going to show you what stiff peaks look like. So I've just finished taking it out, and this is what a stiff peak looks like. It's kind of self-explanatory. It creates a kind of thin spike at the end of your whisking attachment. And it doesn't flop over, it doesn't bend. If you're still kind of unsure whether or not it's a stiff peak or not, there's a fun trick that you can just flip it over and it shouldn't fall out the bowl and it shouldn't kind of pour out even if you tap on it a little bit. So now we have our stiff peaks formed. We can take it off the stand mixer and take my spatula that I've been using to scrape down the bowl periodically while it's been mixing. And make sure you're just keeping a steady eye on it, because stiff peaks can go to the actual meringue collapsing quite fast. So it can go from nice and stiff peaks to the meringue kind of just falling apart and almost turning into a curd-like texture. And that's not what you want, you just want the stiff peaks. And now we're gonna start with our piping stuff. So I don't have piping bags with me, and I've always used this kind of method. I just have some Ziploc baggies, I have a cup, and I have a piping tip. This is what you will need though. So you need a piping tip, but necessarily not a piping bag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and I also have a food coloring here. I'm just going to take the very, very end of the tip off with my scissors. Be careful not to cut yourself. I'll just take the very tip off the end of the bag. I'm going to take my piping tip, and I'm going to push it through the little thing that I made here, the little cut that I did. And I'm going to push it through until it kind of becomes very taut on the end of the bag. And so now I don't have to worry about it falling off or anything like that. I can shape it around and it won't come out. And that's what you want. And I'm going to put this into our cup. I'm going to slightly bend the tip. This is more for like anything that's kind of liquidy that you need to pipe, but this is a very stiff mixture, so there's no need to worry about it coming out the end of the bag, end of the tip. So I just have it in the bag here, and this will help me pour all of the meringue into our bag. And then I'm going to just take a few of our food coloring. I have red food coloring here since we are doing peppermint. And I'm just going to put a few drops into our bowl, like 5 or 6 there. And very carefully with my spatula, I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to swirl it around a little bit. I might even drag some up from the bottom. Very lightly, you don't want to mix it in all the way. And then I'm going to take this from our bag, or from our bowl into our bag. And so I'm just going to scoop out our meringue. I'm going to scrape it into the inside of our bag. You may not look it, but the meringue is very sticky since we added in all that sugar earlier. So you want to make sure not to spill this everywhere because it can be a hassle to clean up. And I'm just going to close the top of our bag. And then leaving a little bit of an air pocket, so air can escape when we're piping. I'm going to set my bowl aside, and I'm going to leave this in the bag. I might even put this in the fridge while we prepare our cookie sheets and preheating our oven. So I'm going to put this into the fridge just for a minute, and then I'm going to start getting all my stuff set up and ready. Alright, so now we're going to begin piping. So I've cut out my parchment paper to fit our cookie sheets pretty good, pretty perfectly. And I have my oven preheating at 225 Fahrenheit. While my oven preheats, I'm going to start piping, because once these are piped, we're going to pop them directly into our oven. So let me start off by our first step of our piping. We're going to gather the kind of the top of the bag, and we're going to push as much of it down into our little corner. I'm going to try to twist the bag a little bit, kind of gathering the top so we have this nice little piping bag. And I'm going to squeeze, and I'm going to take the ends of our parchment, and we're just going to do a little dot on each corner so it holds the parchment in place as we're piping. And then we're just going to begin piping. So, kind of like cookies, we want these kind of a little bit spread apart. And we're just going to pipe a little dollop in the middle. And we're kind of going to build it up around until we get a nice little swirl. Don't worry about them having to be perfect, because we are dipping these in chocolate later, and the chocolate will definitely be a greater appeal than the actual shape of the meringue. But you also get this cool coloring effect with the food coloring. We didn't kind of mix them away, so we get these cool little spiral effects, which makes them look like little peppermint candies. They won't spread out in the oven because they kind of just crisp up and dry. So I'm not spreading them too far apart, but just enough so in case one did spread just a little too much, it'd still give a nice little comfort room. So bake for an hour, hour and a half, turn off the oven, then let them sit in the oven for another 1 to 2 hours until they're completely dry. And they should almost feel like macaron cookies at the top, where it's like it kind of feels like that. We're going to decorate them with our melted chocolate and our crushed peppermint candies. Alright, so I'm going to pop these in the oven, and then we'll move on to our next step, which is our decorating. And here are our finished meringues out of the oven. I've let them sit in the oven for an extra 2 hours, so I did change in that time. Um, but we have all of our meringues set. They're set and dried out, so they're ready for our decoration. So we're going to dip them in some chocolate, and we have some crushed peppermint candies here. I just used a rolling pin and I double bagged them to make sure there's no mess. And then I just melted down our milk chocolate chips in 30-second increments in the microwave until it's fully melted and it came out smooth. So now I'm going to keep my parchment with the cooking sheet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take each little meringue cookie and I'm going to dip it halfway into our melted chocolate. I'm going to let it drizzle off. And then I'm just going to do a little dip into our peppermint candies. And that's one meringue cookie down. And then we're just going to keep doing that with each of our meringue cookies. I've also let the chocolate melt, or let the chocolate cool just a tiny bit, so it's not too hot where it's gonna melt the meringue cookies, which is possible. Okay, so now that we have our meringues dipped in chocolate, and I have some dipped in chocolate, some dipped in chocolate with peppermint candies, and some just plain because I really like the colors on those ones. Um, but, but I'm gonna put these into the fridge. We're gonna let them sit for around 20 to 30 minutes until the chocolate has completely set, and then they're ready to eat. So I'm gonna put these in the fridge real quick. I'm gonna let them chill, and then I will show you what the final result is of all of our hard work and our patience of making these wonderful meringues. And here are finished meringues out of the fridge. They look fantastic and I can't wait to try one. I really liked all the variations that I did with the chocolate and the peppermints and just keeping some normal. But thank you guys for joining me on an episode of Owen's Treats. I hope you guys try out this recipe and I'll have more fun holiday treats coming up in the near future. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!